Hello everyone. Today we are in for a little journey on the water. We are standing on the bank of the Vltava, and very soon we will cross to the other side to see Prague from a quieter, calmer, and very beautiful angle. In Prague, even the most ordinary trip can suddenly turn into a small adventure. At first glance, what is so special about it? Just public transport. But today, we are not taking a tram, not a bus, and not even the metro. Today, a small boat is waiting for us, carrying us along the Vltava. We arrived at the Výtoň stop. There were already people waiting by the pier, but not too many. It was immediately clear that today we were lucky there would be no need to wait for the next boat.
Are we definitely all going to fit?
Yes, of course, there are not many people today. Right on schedule, our little boat pulled up to the pier. Everything was calm, without any rush. The captain stepped out of his cabin where he had been steering the boat, saw off the passengers who had arrived on this run, and immediately began greeting the new ones. He was also the one checking tickets before boarding. Get your ticket ready in advance. Here, the captain is also the helmsman and the ticket inspector.
Wow, a real captain?
A very real one.
I hope we are not going to tip over.
Relax. Just look at that serious face. He is clearly a professional. A minute later, we were already on board. The boat rocked slightly under our feet. The motor began to hum, and the shore slowly started drifting away. And almost at once, that special feeling appeared. The one that makes little rides like this stay in your memory. The journey is short, and yet it already feels completely different from an ordinary ride on city transport. Everything feels different on the water. Even a familiar city looks different. The shore, the houses, the embankments, Vyšehrad, everything seems close. And yet, from the water, Prague feels calmer, more spacious, and somehow softer. The waves spread out from the side of the boat. The wine was fresh but pleasant, and it is in moments like this that you understand why, even a few minutes on the water...
What is this? Some kind of fast little boat?
Almost. And by the way, it is one of the most romantic ways to get around in Prague.
Come on. Romance on public transport?
Believe it or not, yes. And the most interesting part is that the ride costs the same as a regular tram ticket.
So, this is not some expensive tourist cruise?
No, it is just regular city transport. And if you have a transport pass like I do, then the ride is already included, and that is exactly what makes it so appealing. From the outside, it looks like we are about to take some separate river excursion, but in reality, it is all very simple. The same city ticket, the same transport system, only this time...
Yes, it really is beautiful. And romantic, too.
See? I told you. The ride here is very short, but that is actually part of its charm. It never has time to become something ordinary. And after a little while, as we were crossing the wavy river, the captain asked whether anyone was getting off at the stop before the terminus. Silence. No one answered, and the boat continued on, straight toward Císařská Louka. We arrived at Císařská Louka, which in Czech means Imperial Meadow. So, we made it. Was it scary?
No, not really. But the thought still crossed my mind. If something happened, is there even a life ring here?
Let us hope there is more than one. After such a short crossing, everything somehow feels lighter and more cheerful. Once I step onto the shore, I immediately ask the captain whether I can take the same route back later. He says yes and tells me the next return crossing will be very soon. So first, I walk over to the timetable, check the time, take a photo of it on my phone, and see how much time I have for a short walk. And that, by the way, is also very Prague-like. Even when everything feels romantic and beautiful, ordinary city life is still there underneath it all. You not only admire the views, you also need to know when your transport back will arrive. At first, the impression was a quiet one. No wow effect. Nothing that immediately jumps out and says, here it is, a historic place, an island like any other. Quiet, green, calm. So, shall we go and look for the locals?
Yes, let us go.
We walked on, looking around, but honestly, in the first few minutes, a thought came up. So, what is actually so special about this place?
Yes, so far it is not really clear. You do not exactly see the history.
Maybe it is not that there is nothing here. Maybe we just do not know what we are looking at. Let us ask Google. And that is when it started getting more interesting. It turns out that Císařská Louka is not just an island for strolling. Today, it is an artificial island about 1.7 kilometers long. It appeared at the turn of the 19th and 20th centuries when the Smíchov harbor was being built. A canal was cut and part of the land became separated from the bank. That is how the island in its present form came into being. But the place itself is much older. Back in 1297, during the coronation of Wenceslas II, celebrations and a grand feast were held here. At that time, this was not yet an island, but a wide riverside meadow. So the island, as we know it today, came later, while the place itself had already been known and important since medieval times. And once you know that, you start seeing everything differently. At first, it seems like just a peaceful leisure area, but then you realize that this place has a very serious history. Today, there are yacht clubs, sports grounds, a campsite, walking paths, and places to relax here. But many centuries ago, royal celebrations took place on this very ground. Once you learn details like that, the walk becomes much more interesting. You stop looking at the island as just a green piece of land in the middle of the river and start seeing it as a place that has changed over time without losing its history. I keep walking farther along the island, sometimes moving closer to the water, and gradually some really beautiful spots begin to open up. From here, you get a great view of Vyšehrad. There are good places for photos and videos. There are benches right by the bank, and this is exactly where it feels especially nice to pause for a moment. Nothing dramatic is happening, but that is the whole effect of this place. It does not try to impress you. It simply gives you quiet, water, air, and a beautiful view of the city. And then, as it slowly starts to get dark, everything becomes even more beautiful. From the island, there are beautiful views of the water and of Vyšehrad. There are benches right by the water, and this is exactly the kind of place where it feels especially good to stop and sit for a while. With a small group, as a couple, or even alone, to look at Vyšehrad, at the water, at the riverside, and just think, to make plans, to remember how your day went, your month, or even an entire chapter of your life. It is views like these that create this calm, reflective, slightly romantic atmosphere. Around you, there is the sound of the water, the sight of boats, the closeness of the river carried by a light breeze, and simply ordinary life. And all of that creates a very special kind of comfort. You start to feel what is real, to hear yourself, your own thoughts. No rush, no noise. All the bustle stayed over there on the other side of the Vltava. And maybe that is exactly the beauty of trips like this. Not that they are supposed to impress you on purpose, not that everything here has to be grand, but that sometimes you simply step onto an ordinary little river shuttle boat and suddenly come away with an impression that stays with you far more strongly than something heavily advertised ever could. An ordinary ticket, an ordinary route, just a few minutes on the water, and already it feels as if you have discovered another Prague. Quiet, calm, and far from touristy. A Prague where even a short journey can become a story. And maybe that is the city's real secret. Sometimes, romance does not arrive on a festive sightseeing boat with music, but on a modest public riverboat with an ordinary city ticket. Soon, the pier appears ahead again. The passage is still closed, the captain is nowhere in sight, and all that is left is to wait a little by the water. But even this waiting looks beautiful here. In front of me are the evening Vltava, the glowing city, the stop sign, the quiet bank, and that feeling that you are still very close to Prague, yet already a little apart from its bustle. After a while, the captain appears. I take out my wallet again and get my travel pass ready, just in case, although this time he does not ask for anything. I get on the boat, and it turns out that on the way back, I am completely alone. As the boat pulls away from the shore, it slowly turns toward the city, and the return crossing turns out to be perhaps even more beautiful than the daytime one. Now, Prague is no longer simply visible, it is glowing. Vyšehrad, the lights along the bank, the reflections in the water, the waves cut by the boat, the Czech flag at the stern, the sound of the engine, the spray, the dark river, and the shining city ahead, all of it together creates a very calm, collected, almost meditative mood. Evening on the water always gives ordinary views a completely different depth. During the day, you simply look at the city, but in the evening it begins to work more like a mood. Not like a postcard, not like a tourist collection of pretty places, but like something more alive, more personal. We head back toward Výtoň, pass beneath the bridge, see the glowing riverbanks, and gradually the boat approaches our pier again. The captain docks carefully, opens the exit, and I step back onto the shore. I am back on Naplavka now, and it is already almost empty here. A train passes over the bridge, the light from the lamps falls across the stone embankment, and our boat pulls away from the pier once more. And in that moment, one simple thing becomes especially clear. The real charm of trips like this is not that they are supposed to amaze you on purpose. It is not that everything here has to be grand. It is that sometimes you simply step onto an ordinary river ferry, ride on an ordinary city, travel past, spend a few minutes on the water, and suddenly get an impression that stays with you much more strongly than something heavily advertised ever could. An ordinary ticket, an ordinary route, a few minutes on the water. And already it feels as if you have seen another Prague. Quiet, calm, evening lit, and far from touristy. A Prague where even a short trip can become a story.